3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. No problem.
So we got PhD right now for this press conference. Just want to confirm that you guys got it on your end. Yeah. Yeah. And level check 1 2 1 2 check 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 level check. You guys can hear that. Excellent. Thanks, sir. I'll just leave it live for the time being. Oh yeah, plenty of time.
Today's news conference will begin in 2 minutes. It's four photos on this, and we've got more somewhere else on the Dropbox. Yeah, I can email you the link. 1 minute and 30 seconds.
My ask is don't come behind me. My ask is don't come behind me.
50 seconds. $30. 20. 15. 10. 6. 4. Good afternoon, and thank you for attending Police Headquarters. My name is Constable Carolyn DeClute, and I am here today to introduce Chief Mark Saunders, who will discuss the overnight search warrants and arrests.
Thank you for your attendance. Over the course of the past several months, the Major Projects Section of the Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force has been engaged in an investigation into the activities of the street gang known as the Chester Lee Gang. This investigation was intelligence-led, and based on that, we alleged that this, in fact, was operating as a criminal organization, and they were involved in illegal activities that posed a direct threat to the communities. As the investigation progressed, it became apparent that this group had been involved in numerous violent offenses involving firearms, and further to that, they were active in the sale and distribution of illicit narcotics. More specifically, we're talking about fentanyl trafficking. Over the course of 8 months, investigators gathered evidence on dozens of individuals affiliated to the gang. Those efforts culminated early this morning in the execution of numerous search warrants and arrest warrants throughout the GTA. I can advise you that this project has resulted in the arrest of close to 40 people, and this morning was a seizure of significant firearms and quantity of narcotics. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of our Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force, as well as our partner agencies for their dedication and professionalism in carrying out these coordinated, multi-jurisdictional operations. Their work is still ongoing as we speak. We allege that this gang is a dangerous street gang that, while having roots in the area surrounding Victoria Park Avenue and Finch Avenue, its criminal activities extended throughout Toronto, the GTA, as well as the rest of this country. Our investigators are confident that this project has effectively disrupted and dealt a significant blow to the hierarchy and the operations of this gang. This investigation is still ongoing and will be going on throughout the day, and I can advise you that there will be a full media conference held here at headquarters tomorrow at 10 a.m., where specific details will be provided to you. And because this investigation is still unfolding, there won't be many questions that I'll be able to answer, but I promise you that there'll be more detailed answers tomorrow. And this is an opportunity that I'll take some questions for now, and tomorrow you'll definitely get a more fulsome explanation in detail as to what has occurred and what we had to do.
Are there any charges laid at this point?
There are numerous charges involving firearms and robberies and a host of other things at this time. Tomorrow it'll be more tactical with respect to the contraband that was seized, firearms that were seized. I believe we have a total of, I think, 40 firearms. No, a total of 23 firearms. 10 were seized today. There were 43 arrests that were made around the province prior to this investigation. 37 people were arrested this morning, so that is more than what I said before. So we're looking at 80 people that have been apprehended in total as a result of this investigation, and 23 firearms to date that have been seized as a result of this investigation.
I hear the words intelligence-led used by the police, which is it's an important investigative approach. For those that aren't familiar with that, can you expand on what that is and how much of a key role it played in a big project like this?
Sure. So, as you're aware, that the City of Toronto, the street gang subculture is the largest in the country. And there have been concerns in the past with how we utilized our police techniques when it comes to how we would develop our relationships with the community. When we talk about intelligence-led, what it does is it recognizes that the vast majority of the communities out there are law-abiding, want safe communities, but recognizing that there's a very small percentage of that criminal element, specifically with the street gang entities. The street gang subculture uses firearms on a regular basis. So having our focus be hyper towards those people, utilizing our specialized entities, our Gun and Gang Task Force, for example, utilizing our intelligence officers, we can streamline and focus specifically on those components of the community. And so what you have is a focused strategic involvement whenever there is an interaction. And so today, and the main reason why I'm here is whenever you have a large presence of law enforcement in a small neighborhood, there are going to be concerns. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And so the message today is it was intelligence-led. We have a tremendous amount of evidence with the allegations that we make, and we have to utilize the proper resources to properly control the situation, make those apprehensions to the safest of our ability, and try to disrupt the community as least as possible. So that is basically the intelligence process in which we do these types of investigations, and we're getting some pretty good results.
Chief, I have other questions for you.
I'll take one.
Was,
We got a lot of people here. Go.
okay, so then I'm just going to switch gears a little bit. I just got a note from the president of the Toronto Police Association, and he says that officers have expressed deep concerns about how the situation at the Raptors Championship Parade was handled. They're not happy. They say there was a poor planning, a lack of support, and we've also heard from multiple sources outside the city that you rejected additional support for paid duty officers to help out. Is that true? If so, why?
No, and I will say the event definitely was a large event when you're looking at 2 million people, and I can appreciate that. We had over 525 resources that were there. What you saw in the public was not all of the resources that we had that were available, and I'm certainly not going to draw 2 million officers because that's just not going to be possible. We utilized the resources to the best of our ability. Some officers had a different experience. The feedback I got from many officers were they had a great time. Yes, it was taxing. challenging, but how the men and women from the Toronto Police Service act is how I expect them to be professional, to be courteous, to deal with the circumstances to the best of their ability, and they did a fantastic job. It was a celebratory event, and by and large, the vast majority of Canadians, the vast majority of people that went there, definitely felt that way. There were issues of hydration and other factors. We're working with the city and other agencies to look at best practices on the go forward, and I look forward to figuring out what we need to do to get it better. But overall, my men and women did a fantastic job, and most of them...
You didn't turn down additional resources? I just want to be very clear.
I don't recall turning down resources.
Chief, on this case, that a quantity of drugs had been seized as well. Can you give a measurement or dollar amount to how much?
No, tomorrow you'll get a further explanation. The bigger concern is that we're talking about fentanyl now, and we're talking about a drug that is 100 times more potent than heroin. And when we look at the opioid situation across the country, and specifically in Toronto, we're seeing an increase of that. It's causing grave concerns when we're dealing with such lethal drugs. Tomorrow you'll hear some of the steps and measures that it takes to conduct search warrants in that type of environment. Very dangerous, a huge concern, but more importantly, the quality of life that it reduces in any community is tremendously egregious. And the fact that we've got an entity that is distributing that drug is a concern, and I'm glad and grateful for the work that the men and women from the Guns and Gangs implemented, as well as the frontline people that were able to assist in that intelligence gathering and other jurisdictions that assisted us today and throughout the investigation that went not just Toronto, but provincially and as well nationally.
Are you finding that fentanyl is sort of the street drug of choice amongst gangs and drug dealers these days?
Well, I don't think people are going out and saying, I want to buy fentanyl. What they're using it is they're cutting it into the drugs that people are interested in. So whether or not it's a heroin or even cocaine, and it adds that extra factor to that drug. But it is so dangerous in the sense that if it's not cut properly, people will die as a result of it. And it speaks to, they're called hotspots, where if you have a couple of granulars connected, that will be lethal. We're talking about it being lethal in its granular form, and that's what's frightening about that particular drug. But it also creates an opportunity for fantastic revenue, and that's what's appealing to the drug traffickers, is the fact that you can make so much more money utilizing that dangerous drug and not taking any consideration for people that are dying as a result of it.
Are we still at the tip of the iceberg? Do you have an idea of the scope of this gang?
I do have a scope, but I don't want to be subjective. I think tomorrow is going to be a fantastic opportunity to speak with the lead investigators and to speak to the other agencies that were critical in our success today.
How many officers were
Generally
involved?
about gang culture. I know last year, obviously, there was a lot of talk about guns and gangs, and you said at the end of your press conference that it would be a priority of yours for 2019. What things have Toronto Police done to try and ensure that this year's not a repeat? I know there was talk about increasing video cameras and community officers. What types of things have you been able to implement so far?
Well, I'm certainly not going to give the criminal element the playbook of things that we are doing right now, and I'm not going to answer the world of what ifs, but what I will say that in not just the city of Toronto, in any urban city, this issue is increasing. And I take it for the symptoms that it has caused as a result of it. So the street gang issue, there's a reduction of quality of life. But when I speak to the enforcement piece, that is our role in our lane. There have to be other steps on both ends of that spectrum if we're going to get this right. To think that we're going to arrest our way out of this is ludicrous. It does not happen. It will not happen. And I'll say that until the end of my term. We have to take the appropriate steps from the front end to have the right decisions being made. We have to do our enforcement piece. But then at the back end, where we keep talking, 90% of people that we apprehend are going back into the public. What does that final product look like? And we're going to repeat that cycle if we don't have the investment from all streams. But from an enforcement perspective, we have used so many different techniques right now. When we talk about technology and we talk about different strategies and techniques, learning from the behaviors of the street gang subculture, we've become better at what we do. We've become more surgical, as one of the questions have asked, at how we approach our investigations to make sure we reduce that public angst to the best of our ability and stay focused on that very, very small percentage that is invoking the tremendous amount of gunplay and harm across our communities.
And these gangs, does it sometimes feel like whack-a-mole, like you dismantle one, but then the demand is there for drugs and it sort of pops up somewhere else?
Well, drugs in North America have been at the predominant forefront when we talk about loss of life and quality of life issues. This is a new drug, and the more we can make people aware, the more we have a better chance at making that reduction. But I will say it's not just a Toronto issue. It is an urban issue right across North America. Different cities have different approaches on how in which they need to look after and resolve that. I can tell you right now that we have had tremendous cooperation from our local municipality. The mayor has been a very strong supporter of looking at the whole gamut of issues that we need to do and steps we need to take. The provincial government is also funded from several aspects and the federal funding. So I think collectively for the City of Toronto, we've got all of the right stakeholders involved, but we need to expand on this, and we really need to be more legitimate with certain streams that I think needs more support. We will continue to do our job to the best of our ability, and how it's translating right now, I wouldn't say that it's a whack-a-mole. I really do think that we're going about it the right way. We will increase our capacities when needed and when necessary. I don't think that taking down a project is the euphoria moment where we can all celebrate right now. It's a statement that there's a lot more that needs to be done at the end of the day.
Chief, you mentioned that there were some firearms offenses that prompted this investigation. What were some of those offenses?
You'll have a better list tomorrow and a more comprehensive storyline. I don't want to really get into it because I would not be the best choice for that story.
Can you repeat the name of the gang and how long you've been on its trail?
Yeah, it was the Chester Lee Gang, and I'm specific in not mentioning them. This is celebratory to gangs when you start mentioning their name. These are not heroes by any stretch of the imagination. These are people that are killing people, and if you're in the wrong crossfire, you're going to be involved in that as well too. So I'm not going to glorify this gang or any street gang that's out there because it's not the right thing to do.
How many officers were involved in these search warrants? And also, can you just speak to sort of the dangers that they face as well when they're going into a fentanyl situation where, you know, if they inhale something, they could be put at risk as well?
Well, not only if you inhale it, if you touch it, it will go in your skin and it can have fatal outcomes. So that's how sensitive that particular drug is. We have sections that can deal with that type of environment. So we have to heighten our awareness and our training when it comes to the officers that are going in. This project speaks to the collaboration of us working with other law enforcement. There is a very strong brotherhood and sisterhood when it comes to these types of large-scale investigations and large-scale takedowns. We've gotten so much better at having that communication piece, that collaboration. The criminal element is very collaborative. We're a lot more collaborative than we ever have been, and looking at how to instruct and train and have the necessary tools for the right outcomes. Today was a testament of that, just that. I don't have the numbers, but I can tell you there are a multitude of agencies involved, and I can't get into the specifics of numbers of investigators and then the frontline people involved in today's coordination. But I know that it would have an effect on the community, which is why I'm speaking. They will have a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, a lot of issues, and rightfully so. And I'm here to say that we're focused on a specific entity, not that whole community. We think we've got those players. There may be some more that are outstanding. By tomorrow, you'll have an idea of how many people may or may not be outstanding, or if we have them all. The investigation still is ongoing, though I can tell you that much. And the steps that we are looking at from an exit program for some of these kids that really are just in the wrong place type of thing and being influenced by negative impacts, working with other agencies from that end of the spectrum, as well as if there's further enforcement, further apprehensions, further search warrants that need to be conducted. So I'll take one more question, and then I'll be gone. Oh, hi, Joe.
How are you doing, Chief?
Good,
Is
good.
it okay by us first, or do you want somebody you pointed to someone else?
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I know you want to talk about the human side of it and the young people involved, but all these guns off the street in the summer is a good thing.
Yeah.
The question that I wondered about was, we see this every time. First of all, the dangers for the officers, and we saw that with what happened prior to this. This is dangerous business
Yes.
for everybody.
Absolutely.
So maybe you can comment on that. The second thing is you alluded to it, Chief, and I think this is a big thing, where all these people are going to be going to court, and they're going to be getting bail, and they're going to be out, and then they're eventually going to have trials, and it's like this vicious circle of the same thing.
Yes.
And I wonder at some point, and it's certainly not the police's area, the court's a different area, but we need to address that at some point, that there's got to be some sort of intervention or something to stop the cycle. So those are the two things. I guess the officers being hurt and the preventative stuff.
Sure. So when we talk about our officers and the officer safety, one of the things I'm grateful for is the Gun and Gang Task Force. I will say is the best in the country at doing what they do. And unfortunately, part of that is because of the capacity, the amount of work that they have to do, because of the level of street gang issues that are across our city. When we know that over 90% of the gunplay that happens in the city has a street gang component to it, the work that they do every day is directly related to guns and officer safety concerns. We have highly trained officers. They're trained on a regular basis. We try to provide the best equipment that we can, and situations do happen, just as the other day. And I certainly can't speak to the interaction at that moment. That is the SIU. But I can tell you right now that that particular investigation, it was focused. It was intelligence-led. The frontline officers had an understanding of what was going on and why that vehicle was a specific vehicle, which then coordinated with the Gun and Gang Task Force. So this was not a random stop. It was very specific, very targeted. There was a strong criminal element to why that situation occurred, and they did what was necessary, so I can't speak to that any further. When we talk about the social piece, if we're going to get it right, it has to be enforcement and other factors, all equal partners in funding. We have to go from grant funding to core funding. I've said this over and over and over again. The grant funding is limited. The core funding shows legitimacy to the programs that are there. I do have healthy governments that are interested in this, and once that transfers into that core piece, I think we'll start seeing some much better products out of this.
Have these people in custody, we'll have them in custody. The system has them right here. This might be the place to deal with that, not just in terms of punitive. And I think there should be punitive, obviously, but
yeah.
But you know, and I wondered why, you know, at some point, and it's certainly not, I know it's not your job to do it, but I wondered if you could comment on that this is the time to do it, while you've got people in custody and their family are in the court and all of that. You're right there. Instead of just saying, okay, go back to the area you live and fend for yourself.
Yeah, and it speaks to that third component with what do you do after the apprehension. But you have to take the story as a whole, Joe. Whatever the starting point is, I'm fully supportive of it. I've kept my lanes open for anyone that wants to be a part of that process. But people, you're not born a gangster. There is a lived experience that causes people to become members of street gangs. And that's what has to be looked at. And granted, when gunplay is happening, then the Toronto Police Service will take an active role in making that apprehension and create those deterrent factors. But you have to take it in its right context. Why are people becoming? Nobody signs up for it, and yet we have so many that become street gang members, and that needs to be the starting point of the conversation. And I think if we take all three lanes, we're going to be in a good place, or a much better place. Thank you very much, everyone, for your support.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for attending. Hopefully you're able to join us tomorrow for the follow-up.